So overnight, you know, after a long week and days of horrific tension and increasing feelings from our viewers on all sides of just fear, pure fear of the horrible scenes we've seen, it looked more peaceful. We had large groups of anti-racist campaigners seemingly taking a stand, and also the news that there have been the first arrest processing of those accused. What do you think? Do you think this could be a turning point?
I think the arrests, the swift arrests and sentencing is key to this whole thing in terms of bringing law and order. I remember as a backbencher, you were in the House, Ed, in 2011, we had a series of riots, urban riots. And what happened was that the government moved very quickly, the legal system moved very quickly, and people were arrested and sentenced. And that diffused a lot of the tension. And I think exactly the same thing, I hope, is happening. I think it is happening this year.
Well, I mean, look, it's so good to wake up some good news on this one after days of absolutely horrific reports from across the country. And, of course, we've got to remember that this all started with an absolutely heinous, terrible murder of 3 beautiful little girls, and I think their funeral is in the next few days. And we should always remember that is the backdrop to what we've seen in these last few days across the country. I think you're right. I think Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper coming out, being firm straight away that those who commit these crimes will be dealt with. And actually, you talk about 2011. Keir Starmer was, of course, the Director of Public Prosecution. So he is applying his experience as being somebody who puts thugs behind bars to what is happening today. But I think it's also important that I was very proud, and still am proud, that I represented a hugely diverse constituency. I know lots of people in the place that I live and represented in Leicester, as they will be across the country, have been terrified of what has been going on. Terrified of the Islamophobia, the racism, the hatred directed at minority communities. And those politicians who have pandered to this, who've fanned the flames of this, they've got to be called out, because the words of politicians have consequences.
So I have a slightly different view, because I think you're right. I think the racism, the thuggery is outrageous. But I remember Tony Blair, and you'll remember this, he used to say, you've got to be tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime. We've got to look at the underlying causes for this sort of activity. You can't justify and condone violence. But you've got to try and understand...
What are the underlying causes, in your view?
Well, you know, clearly there's discontent with immigration. Clearly, and I think our government failed in that. I think we didn't reduce it to tens of thousands, which we'd campaigned on in 2010. And I think it's a situation that needs to be looked at. That's not to condone the people who are out on streets, you know, being racist, being violent. But it is to say, look, there is a social problem here, potentially, and we've got to look at it and try and resolve it.
Of course, you're right about that. And the opinion polling says that concerns about immigration is now right up there in terms of many people's concerns. We had Baroness Varzi on the programme a couple of days ago. I mean, she was talking about the last 10 years, and she was saying that in some places in the mainstream, some parts of politics, some parts of the media, some commentators, you know, a language has been allowed to develop at the dinner table, which ends up being Islamophobic, that we've allowed there to be a mainstream kind of language about these people. And then what we saw last week, you were talking about the kind of the lies on social media about the Southport killer, that it was, you know, well, it must have been a migrant from a boat, he was a Muslim.
All of that.
That is all reflecting a discourse which has been allowed to develop over a decade.
We've got to be very careful about the language. And I think Saeed...
Is she right, though?
Saeed is right to say that, you know, a lot of these issues have been treated in a way that is not sensitive. But the underlying fact is that immigration levels are way higher than anything we've seen, you know, in our past. And that's something
that was legal.
Legal.
And the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman, called it an invasion. It was an invasion which she allowed because it was legal migration.
Well, her language was not moderate. I mean, we know about that, and she's dropped out of the Tory leadership contest because I think she's alienated too many of her colleagues, frankly, with her kind of inflammatory language. But all of this...
And do you think that kind of language, because the detail of words is so sensitive on all sides, isn't
Absolutely.
It? You know?
And also the other thing we've got that, you know, we didn't have 10 years ago as much is social media. So that's creating a whole kind of circumstance.
But some of those people, you know, that we've seen in the riots and of causing the violent thuggery that's criminal, you know, whatever the motivation, were chanting "Stop the boats."
Yeah, because they're using that, and a lot of it is cynical. Sorry.
Yeah, but look, right. Politicians have to be careful with the language that they use. And just yesterday, we had who is now apparently the favourite for the Tory leadership.
Favourite. I know what you're going to say.
I mean, I personally don't think he is the favourite, but apparently he's the bookie's favourite for the Tory leadership, using the most...
Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, Robert Jenrick.
He was on our programme and then went on Sky News after.
I mean...
And you got into trouble
I mean,
for that.
what an act using the most incendiary, Islamophobic language, in my view, criticising, effectively, many of the people I used to represent in Leicester for when they used the Muslim call to prayer and saying somehow they should be arrested for that. Why is that considered to be acceptable? He's saying that because he thinks that will appeal to other Tories in the Tory party. And I saw on the Twitter last night, Team Jenrick really pleased about how the row was playing out for him.
Mel Stride, one of the other Tory candidates, then came out and criticised Robert Jenrick for saying that. The other four have been silent so far. Kwasi, if you want to win the Tory leadership election to be the next leader, what approach should you take on these issues?
So what I think Jonathan's right. I think what Robert's doing is trying to appeal to effectively the right of the party. Now, the actual proposal...
There are people scared to leave their homes.
But they're not scared about Allahu Akbar.
No, they're scared because of the situation that we're living in. And it doesn't help, you know, the nation have trust in politicians of whatever, you know, background or party, when they see writ so large, such sensitive and powerful issues being used to win leadership. I mean,
but that's politics, OK? So we've got to accept the fact...
But it shouldn't be, though, should it?
No, but you've got to accept the fact that there are lots of people who are worried about immigration levels, and you've got this contest in terms of the Tory leadership, and people are trying to define themselves politically in that spectrum.
Yeah.
Now, in that context, people are going to say, you know, fairly provocative things.
And is that OK?
But hang on, Kwasi. I have been speaking in the last few days to people I used to represent in Leicester, what would have been my Muslim constituents, Muslim community leaders who are associated with various mosques in Leicester, and just checking in on them, basically, to make sure they were OK.
Yeah.
And they have been telling me they have been scared. They told me last night...
What, by Robert's words?
No, the context in which we are in, that they were telling me last night that they did not want to leave the House, that they're really worried about what is going on, and then for a Tory leadership candidate to enter this debate in the way that he did and use those remarks in a craven attempt to appeal to, as you say, to the right of the Tory party is utterly irresponsible when we see what's going on across the country.
It's a democratic process, and people have to set out their stall and tell the voters, tell the selectorate in this instance, what they represent. Now, I don't agree with what he said. I think it's unenforceable. It seems to be a fairly dumb law, in my view. But you can accept that he's trying to carve out a political position where he's going to be tough on Islamic extremism. That doesn't mean to say he's racist. That doesn't mean to say he's anti-Muslim. That doesn't mean any of those things. What he's trying to do is to signal, in a crude way, in my view, that he is going to be very tough on Islamic radicalism. And that exists. I mean, we can't... Whatever we say, it is a thing. Islamic extremism is a thing in this country.
It is, though, a choice for the Conservative Party and for Conservative potential leaders which way they go.
Sure.
Do they reach into the centre ground to try and unite the country, who actually are appalled by
I agree.
These scenes and worried by some of the rhetoric? We know from the opinion poll that most people worry about these things, or do they appeal to what is a minority? And it feels as though that's what Robert Jenrick was trying to do.
So what you've got to do, and you know politics as well as anybody, you've got to win the race you're in. And then, I suppose, I know Robert well. He's quite a moderate person, actually, temperamentally. And if he were to win, I think he would be he'd probably move to the centre. That's what they do.
But that makes it even worse. That makes it even worse.
Look at Keir.
Keir
Keir did the same thing. Keir moved to the left.
Keir Starmer was not making Islamophobic remarks at a time when there's riots and huge parts of the population are living in fear.
Politically, I mean, you might say what he did was irresponsible. I'm just explaining the logic of it.
You think what he did is
what you're doing is explaining the
irresponsible?
logic of politics, and I wonder if people watching think it just revolts me even more
But Keir
about
did the same thing.
politicians when
So
other
Keir-
politicians...
He did. He moved to the left.
It is different.
You know that. He moved to the left.
There's a difference
He said
between...
he was going to nationalise everything.
There's a difference between nationalising the railway and making Islamophobic remarks when the country is terrified because there are thugs rioting on our streets. There's a chasm between
and also,
those two positions.
and to be fair to Robert, I mean, I think, as I said, he's trying to say that Islamic extremism and radicalism is not acceptable. And I think that's a legitimate thing for him, a point for him to make.
He's trying to say it, but he said it using language that those that feel in fear of their lives now directly attribute. I mean, there's YouGov surveys saying that the language of the government of the last 10 to 14 years, they feel has, I mean, not all of them, it was just around 50%, said they feel has contributed to where we are today.
I think what's contributed to it is the failure of the last government, of which I was a member, I put my hands up, to deal with the underlying problem in terms of the numbers and what we pledged in 2010 and what happened, what's happened subsequently. And to be fair to people like Robert Jenrick, he's made the point himself. He was an immigration minister and he's saying we didn't get that right. And now he's trying to be the leader of the party. And I think it's fair for him to bring this up as an issue.
You were talking, Jonathan, there about talking to people in your old constituency. Of course, in Leicester South, you lost the seat.
I did, yeah.
To an independent who was motivated by a different concern about mainstream politics and what was happening, where actually they would see Rishi Sunak, then the Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer as on the same side and against their views.
Yeah, well, thanks for reminding me I lost my seat. That was all right.
Well, can I say, Jonathan...
It was all right kick in the boxes.
Can I say...
It's a bit of a shocker, yes.
I'm the only person who can remind you of this because, you know, been there, done it, got the T-shirt.
Yeah, we've been there together. That's why we can join the club. Yeah, I mean, I lost my seat on the back of an issue around an international issue, Gaza, where a large proportion of my constituents, former constituents, wanted to send a message to the Labour Party and Keir Starmer over its stance on Gaza. It's obviously very disappointing. And actually, I would say, look, the Labour government that's been elected has been pushing Israel and Hamas for a ceasefire, has restored UN funding, wants to get the Palestinian statehood back on track as part of a two-state solution. So I would argue that a lot of the issues my constituents rightly felt strongly about, the Labour government is actually pursuing a policy agenda.
Well, we know that in your case, and the same thing was true for Jess Phillips and for Shabana Mahmood in Birmingham, it wasn't just a legitimate debate about political choices. These are also pretty nasty campaigns that you...
Well, I mean...
Did you suffer it particularly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the videos have gone round Twitter or X of me being hassled and intimidated and harangued in the streets. And it was scary stuff. It was scary stuff.
Give us, for those who haven't seen it, I don't want you to inflame anything or relive something awful for you, but what sort of thing?
I mean,
give us a sense
just on the last point about inflaming anything, you know, this is a minority of idiots, basically. And lots of people in the Leicester Muslim community who felt strongly about Gaza also got in touch with me and said, these, you know, idiots hassling you.
Nothing to do with me.
There's nothing, you know, that's not what the Leicester Muslim community is all about. But, you know, I was chased and hassled down the street for 45 minutes with people shouting in my face, shouting questions at me in my face.
But that's wrong. I mean, that sort of intimidation is wrong. And actually, what I found disappointing was, because I was on the studio like this, when I saw your result, and it was shocking, is that these movements can actually affect electoral outcomes. And that's a disturbing development as far as I'm concerned. Because we don't want to go down the route of sectarian politics, of MPs, candidates being chased down the street because on a single issue. And then eventually, you know, you lost your seat. I think that's a terrible
Well, I mean, look, it's right that people feel strongly about an issue. It's right that people feel strongly about an international issue. Of course it is. And if you win or lose in politics,
Sure.
that's the nature of the
I get
business
that. I get
that 3 of us on this panel have been in. Sometimes you win, sometimes
That's
you
right.
lose. That's the nature of it. But what we don't want is this increasing sort of bullying, intimidation, and it's driven by social media.
A lot of it is
driven by social media.
I mean, let's
and it's
talk about...
polarised as well. It's polarising community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talking of social media, of course, as you rightly said, Rosie, that's been a real feature of in terms of groups getting together and saying where to go and focusing on things. It's been disturbing to see that in action. So Elon Musk, the multi-billionaire owner of X, has been retweeting Tommy Robinson's tweets, and it's had a big impact on Tommy Robinson because it's led to 434 million views.
Yeah,
now, you could say it's a platform of free speech, but not all of the information that's out there, significantly not in many cases, is even true.
Sure.
How do we make platforms like this accountable?
It's a very tricky issue. I mean, you won't be surprised to hear this, but my general view is I don't like government interference or legislation which will curtail free speech. But you're quite right. These people haven't acted responsibly. I think Elon Musk is basically doing a Trump. He's just inserting himself into the story and trying to stir as much agitation and anger to attract attention to himself, frankly. So it's not responsible. But I think we've got to be very careful about going down a route where the government basically says what you can say and what you can't say. It's a difficult balancing act.
But you say that, but we do have rules and regulations about what you can say and can't say. I mean, somebody could not come on this platform, on this on the show this morning and start spouting the most racist, disgusting opinions. You'd rightly shut them down straight away.
They're not allowed to come on and say things that are untrue. Part of our job is to make sure we deliver fact, you know,
exactly.
rigorously.
There are regulations about what can be broadcast, and there are rules around what is said in newspapers, and if somebody doesn't like or it's untrue or defamatory, you can take a newspaper.
So all I'm saying is that
why can't we not have a similar set of rules for social media?
So what I'm saying is that I'd be very wary about extending government reach into essentially what's censorship. I mean, that's what it is. And it is a balance. You're right. You can't incite hatred. You can't incite murder. You can't incite people to criminality.
It's not censorship of Good Morning Britain, but if you say something which is untrue, if you say some of the things that Tommy Robinson has said or that Andrew Tate have said in the last week, that this was a crime committed in Southport by an asylum seeker from a boat, a migrant, we would have to correct that because it's untrue.
Yeah, you would.
And that's not censorship. It's actually making sure that we don't spread false and untrue statements on a privileged platform. Well, the responsibility is for the platform to make sure that their algorithms don't promote untruths and they take down things which they know are untruths or inciting. And that is what Twitter was doing 3 years ago. And it is no longer doing in the name of free speech. And when free speech becomes promoting lies and lies which incite hatred, don't you have to act?
So, no, but where that was coming from, 3 or 4 years ago, was that, we've had this no platforming. We've had a cancel culture. These are things that are talked about. And what Elon Musk was saying is...
We're not in favour of no platform.
Exactly.
But
what he's saying... No, but what he's saying is... And why a lot of people think he rescued the platform is because there are a wider range of voices on it. Now, if they're telling lies,
it's a sewer. It's become a sewer. That's not rescuing. It's become an absolute sewer.
It was never a great...
no, it was never great. But look what has gone on in these last few days. You've seen these awful people like Tommy Robinson influencing events in a way in which we have now seen rioting on our streets and...
which gets clicks on social media, which then brings advertising into the platform.
What you're advocating is, I assume, is more legislation, more regulation.
We've got legislation.
Well, why don't we use the legislation we've got?
Because for some reason it's still not been enacted. We're still waiting for the online harm bill to actually even begin.
And also the danger is with this is that you're just going to drive things into the dark web. You're just going to drive things away, and actually you're not dealing with a problem. Because one of the reasons why this has become an issue is because people have felt, rightly or wrongly, that they're not being listened to, that they're being ignored. So the backlash is even stronger.
Kwasi, you're not defending free speech on a platform, even if it's untrue and it's inciting hate.
No.
And I'm saying, well, given that you're not defending that, let's make sure that we have a way to make these platforms actually act when it is lies and promoting hate. That's all.
I'm just saying it's a
and
fine
you agree
line.
with me.
No, but it's a fine line, OK? What I'm saying is... And also there's a danger that if you suppress people's opinions, then they come out in a more violent...
We've got the news, which happened yesterday. My local councillor's wife, who is a childminder, Lucy Connolly, has been charged with inciting the burning of asylum seekers in hotels. She said at the time, if that makes me racist, so be it. She's called Lucy Connolly. She's taken the post down. The point is, you don't have to rely upon the social media companies to do this on their own.
Yeah.
If the police see these things on Twitter or on Facebook, they are arresting and charging, and we'll see.
So we've got the laws in place to deal with this. That's what you're
thing.
saying, which is what I agree with. And I'm very wary about having more legislation and more regulation and more censorship. Look, it's a finely balanced argument, Ed. But, you know, I just want to...
I think, look, these big tech companies, they've got to be held to account. And the key thing is just what I think, which Ed just mentioned a moment ago. They use their algorithms, they build their algorithms to deliberately keep sending people this material, which has a sort of radicalising effect on people. And but the real reason they're doing it is not because they don't care whether they're radicalising people or not. They know if they keep sending this material to people, people are hooked on the social media.
Right.
They'll keep scrolling, they'll keep pressing their iPhone down, and they will drive up their advertising revenues.
We know that.
They are making money off division and hatred.
You know, and
we've got to do something about that, surely.
All media is driven by those sorts of algorithms and that sort of advertising.
I don't know that that's true. What do you mean, all media?
Well, lots, you know, if you look at newspapers...
We're not driven here on Good Morning Britain
No.
By, you know, spreading division and hate. We don't want to deliver division and hate.
No, but
if people want to, you know, we've got a story actually on the programme today about a wonderful example of how social media has been really helpful.
But if you look at,
we're not
but
intentionally
let me give an
doing
example.
that, are we? Whereas that algorithm is.
So we all remember days when we used to read newspapers. And now most of us look at newspapers online.
Got to say, I still like a paper copy.
Okay, maybe
something
you
very
do.
satisfactory about it.
But
I'm
if you go online,
I'm with you on that.
If you go online, as I do, it's exactly the same sort of thing. You click on stories that are sensational. You click on non-stories that are phrased in a way that is going to draw your attention to them, and then the algorithm just spews out more and more of this stuff.
I am just going to attempt the most jarring segue ever in television. Ever in television. We are debating later in the programme, and we have two guests coming on to discuss this. Is it wrong for women to ogle male hunks in trunks?
There have been some rather famous images of men in trunks, haven't they? The pole vaulter.
I heard about it.
Got a lot of attention. We've hopefully got a strap over the trunk there to avoid anything.
I mean,
so, you know, now I know Jonathan's just come back from holiday, Jonathan. Presumably you were wearing swimming trunks.
How much of a problem has this been in your life?
My whole life.
Have you found... Do you find the ogling of you upsetting?
You get used to it.
Yeah, I just took it in stride when I was on the beach. It's something, you know, that you're used to.
The hazard of life.
You know, when you're built like me, you just get on with it. You just get on with it. What can I say?
Yeah.
But actually, seriously, it's quite interesting because it's that sort of imagery that's driving a lot of the algorithms as well.
Yeah.
So stories about, you know, hunks in trunks, lots of people are going to...
I don't think there's any imagery of me driving any algorithm, I can tell you that.
God forbid. God forbid.
Oh, look, it's good to talk this morning.
But that's the point. It's all driven by
It's all driven by that material. Yeah. OK.
Next time we'll be here in our trunks.
Thank you. We'll hold you to that, both of you.
That would cause a storm.
That would cause a storm. That would be an algorithm and a half. Good to speak to you.